to the Green Fleet Shifting Gears workshop. My name is Kathy Hicks. I'm the Chief of the Office of Fleet and Asset Management for the Department of General Services. Just took this assignment in December last year, so not much time. I need to start out with some housekeeping notes. I already introduced myself. I wanted to tell you one of the biggest changes that we're making for the Office of Fleet and Asset Management is implementing a new data warehouse for the statewide fleet. I think over the years, most departments have responsibility for their own fleet, and now with the implementation of AB 32 and some of the other greenhouse gas reductions and vehicle efficiency statutes that are being implemented and regulations, we have been moving more back towards a centralized control over the statewide fleet. And what this will do is establish a reporting tool that allows us to keep better track of all the vehicles that are owned by the state and be able to respond much better to legislative, media, and other inquiries. Departments are already starting to put in their, we rolled it out in July of 2008. They started it before I was on board. Each department has started inputting their data into our system, and they will be adding operational information into the system on a monthly basis. We will be able to quickly identify the number of state-owned vehicles, and then more importantly, from a utilization standpoint, be able to determine the amount of fuel used, identify the location of the state fleet at any given time, and work towards optimizing our vehicle utilization. Right now, it's all over the board, and we spend a lot of time when we get a media inquiry trying to reach out to the individual departments. Actually, interestingly enough, as the price of gas goes higher, the more complaints that we get about how the state vehicles in our state fleet are being used, and every single department spends an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out what vehicle somebody is complaining about, where it is it being used appropriately. So we will be able to minimize the cost associated with that. We're not going to stop private citizens from noticing that their neighbor's driving a vehicle home and they're paying for gas to get to work, and why is their neighbor able to drive back and forth? But those are some of the things that we'll be dealing with to make sure that every vehicle owned by the state is used appropriately, and those vehicles that are being driven home actually have the appropriate approval to do so, and or justified for the appropriate reasons. So those are some of the best practices that we'll be working at. I think I came on board and I've looked at some of the policies and standards, utilization standards that are in place, and our ability to know exactly what the statewide fleet is will help us put better standards and policies in place for the use of state vehicles. For example, we have a utilization standard right now that says each vehicle has to be used, driven at least 6,000 miles every 6 months, and you report on that. Well, how does that line up with our goal of reducing vehicle miles traveled and or reducing our petroleum consumption? You know, one's trying to drive it down, and the other one gives the incentive to go out and drive your vehicle home back and forth just to put the number of miles on it, so that you can report that you used it or utilized it according to a standard that doesn't make sense. Or even more crazy is, it happens to be a snowplow. A one-size-fits-all standard doesn't apply to a lot of our fleet. It may for some of our vehicles, and I think the public will be glad to know that we are going to be taking a more of a control agency approach and dealing with some of the best practices, and right-sizing our fleet includes making sure that the appropriate type of vehicle is assigned for the type of work being done. And as unpopular as it may be, just because you happen to be the CHP commissioner, you're not out doing any high pursuit chases or pulling speeders over on the freeway or any of those kind of things. So it will be our policy recommendation that CHP commissioner should be in some hybrid Prius, Toyota Prius, or some alternative flex fuel vehicle appropriately sized. You don't need to be in a pursuit vehicle with all the bells and whistles when just because you have that title. So, and not to say that they do. I don't know what the existing CHP commissioner is driving, but in general, we will be taking on all of those unpopular issues. But more importantly, the fleet asset management system will give us better inventory control, better utilization data, and it will become the baseline from which we will move towards meeting our required petroleum reduction and greenhouse gas emission reductions under AB 32 and some of the other executive orders. The fleet asset management system will also provide us with an opportunity to work with departments that own and agencies that own vehicles to help make sure that they are using best practices to minimize their costs of operating their fleet. And I think there are a lot of departments that have made a lot of progress in doing this on their own, and others that have no idea how their vehicles are being used and how much it's costing them. So having this system will be a distinct advantage to us. It also is an opportunity for example, for the Department of General Services fleet side of the department to work better with our procurement division to make sure that we are, in fact, procuring the best contracts available for purchasing vehicles for our state. In fact, one of our most recent initiatives is we are actually working with a consultant to evaluate whether or not we should be moving in the direction of changing our procurement model from a purchasing model to a leasing model, so that we can take advantage of making sure that we have a diversified portfolio of different types of newer technology vehicles, higher efficiency vehicles, all those kind of things, and be able to leverage more with fewer dollars, especially given the current fiscal constraints that everybody's facing and the economy in general. Some of the things that we're hoping to do is take advantage of, for example, Caltrans was supposed to be here today to give a presentation on how they are making sure that they have E85 tanks available for all their vehicles to make sure that they're moving more in the direction of using more alternative fuels and less petroleum, to learn from their lessons learned and pass those on to other departments to make sure that we make that available. We're also working with sister agencies such as the Air Resources Board, California Energy Commission, and some of those to see what funding we can make available to help build an alternative fuel infrastructure in California, because this is the one where DGS has taken the hit from most of statewide fleet owners, that we have federal and state mandates to buy more alternative fuel and hybrid vehicles, but there's not an infrastructure out there to support actually fueling those vehicles with the appropriate alternative fuels. So we are taking on more of a leadership role in helping make sure that we get that infrastructure in place. We're also beginning to tackle the permitting process for being able to put storage tanks, whether they're above ground or in the ground, storage tanks for the alternative fuels around the state with our different departments to make sure that those fuels are available as much as possible to support the public fleet. But what we really need to make it happen in California and to achieve the kind of greenhouse gas emissions reductions that the administration is truly looking for will require an infrastructure that supports the private sector as well. The Department of Parks and Recreation, this is one of those lessons learned. They have been working on downsizing from SUVs and four-wheel drive vehicles or trucks to more fuel-efficient vehicles, pickup trucks that are equipped with camper shells or different kinds of